They say you never forget the moment your entire world shifts. For me, it was at the Preston family's annual charity gala, standing in a glittering ballroom that smelled of expensive perfume and champagne I'd never be offered. I was wearing my black uniform, the one Mrs. Preston insisted I wear even though I wasn't working that night. "Just in case we need you, Miriam," she'd said with that smile that never reached her eyes. 25 years. That's how long I'd worked for the Prestons. 25 years of raising their children while mine ate dinner alone. 25 years of biting my tongue through jokes about my hair, my accent, my people. 25 years of being invisible. Until that night, when I became too visible. I was refilling the ice bucket because, of course, they'd needed me when I heard them. Mr. Preston's booming laugh, his wife's tinkling giggle, their daughter Madison's voice dripping with contempt. "Mom, I can't believe you even let her come tonight." "Oh, sweetie, she's just the help. No one's paying attention to her." My hands froze. Ice cubes clattered against crystal. "She's lucky we even pay her," Mr. Preston added, his words slightly slurred. "Do you know how much we've spent keeping that woman employed? It's charity, really." Laughter erupted around them. Rich, fed, comfortable laughter that echoed off the marble floors I'd scrubbed on my hands and knees. Madison leaned in, loud enough for the whole group to hear. "We're finally replacing her next month. Found a younger girl who'll work for half the price. Can you imagine? Miriam actually thought she was irreplaceable." More laughter. Someone clinked a glass in mock toast. I should have felt rage. I should have felt humiliation. But instead, something cold and crystal clear settled over me like armor. Because there was something the Prestons didn't know. Something they couldn't possibly know. 8 years ago, when Mr. Preston was scrambling during that IRS audit, sweating, panicking, begging me to just sign some forms to help straighten out the books, I'd trusted him. I'd signed. I hadn't asked questions because I trusted them. But their new accountant? He'd asked plenty of questions. And 3 weeks ago, he'd called me with news that made my heart stop. Those forms? They'd listed me as an executive assistant on the company payroll, not the housekeeper rate they'd been paying me under the table, the executive rate. For 8 years, I'd been legally entitled to executive compensation, benefits, and stock options. They'd never paid me a dime of it. And now I was owed $486,000 in back pay. I stood there in that ballroom holding that ice bucket, listening to them laugh about how replaceable I was, how lucky I was, how little I mattered. And I smiled. Because what the Prestons didn't know, not yet, was that I was already listed on their company payroll at a rate 3 times higher than their own salaries. They called me just the help. But their accountant, their lawyers, the IRS, they were about to call me something very different. If you want to see how this unfolds, hit that subscribe button right now. Because karma, she doesn't just knock, she demolishes. Let me take you back to where this all began. I was 29 years old, newly widowed and drowning. My husband Marcus had died in a construction accident. 1 minute he was there, kissing me goodbye. The next I was identifying his body at the morgue. Our son Devin was only 4 years old. The life insurance barely covered the funeral. I had a high school diploma, a mortgage I couldn't pay, and a little boy who kept asking when Daddy was coming home. I needed work, any work, stable work. That's when I met Caroline Preston at my church's job fair. She was volunteering, handing out her family's business cards like party favors. "We're looking for household help," she'd said, her teeth perfectly white, her diamond earrings catching the fluorescent light. "Someone trustworthy, someone who needs a fresh start." She made it sound like salvation, and for a while, maybe it was. The Prestons owned a sprawling estate in the wealthiest part of the city. Mr. Preston ran a commercial real estate development company. Mrs. Preston ran charity galas and her children's lives with equal precision. They had 2 kids then, Madison, who was 7, and Cooper, who was 5. My job was simple. Keep the house pristine, cook their meals, drive the children to school and activities, be available, always available. "We're offering you the cottage out back," Mrs. Preston had said during my interview, gesturing toward a small guest house I could see through the window. Rent-free. It'll be perfect for you and your son. Rent-free. Those words sang in my blood. No more mortgage. No more eviction notices. I took the job that same day. I didn't know I was signing away the next 25 years of my life. Devin grew up on that estate. While I scrubbed marble countertops and ironed Mr. Preston's shirts, my son did homework at the cottage's tiny kitchen table. While I drove Madison to ballet and Cooper to soccer, Devin rode the bus home alone. While I served the Preston family 5-course dinners, Devin ate whatever I could, microwave between tasks. But he got into college, full ride to State University. That's what I told myself during the long nights, the cruel comments, the casual racism that Mrs. Preston insisted was just her sense of humor. "Miriam, you're so articulate," she'd say, like it was a compliment. "Where did you learn to cook like this? Is it a cultural thing? Do you people celebrate Thanksgiving the same way we do? You people." I smiled, I nodded. I bit my tongue until it bled, because Devin needed books. He needed a laptop. He needed a future that didn't look like mine, bent over someone else's toilet, scrubbing someone else's dirt, swallowing someone else's disrespect. I practically raised Madison and Cooper. I was the one who held Madison when she cried over her first heartbreak. I taught Cooper to tie his shoes when his parents were too busy with business calls. I made their Halloween costumes, attended their school plays when their parents couldn't make it, packed their lunches with the crusts cut off just how they liked. They called me Miriam until they turned 12. Then their parents corrected them. "She's not family, sweetie. Call her Mrs. Brooks or just Miriam, but don't be so familiar." After that, I became invisible, a fixture, like the furniture they dusted around but never really saw. 25 years of my life, and I had become a ghost in my own story. It started 3 months before the gala, or maybe it had always been building, and I just refused to see it. Mrs. Preston's diamond tennis bracelet went missing. I was folding laundry in the main house when she stormed into the room, her face twisted with rage. "Miriam, I want you to be honest with me." My hand stilled on a cashmere sweater. "Ma'am?" "My bracelet, the one Robert gave me for our anniversary, it's gone." Her eyes were hard, accusatory. "You were the last person in my bedroom." The air left my lungs. "Mrs. Preston, I would never—" "I'm not accusing you," she said, though her tone said otherwise. "I'm just saying it's convenient that it disappeared right after you cleaned." My throat tightened. 25 years. 25 years of loyalty. And this is what it had earned me. "I didn't take your bracelet." "Then you won't mind if we check your cottage?" It wasn't a question. They tore through my home like DEA agents. Mrs. Preston, Mr. Preston, even Madison, who filmed parts of it on her phone with this sick little smile. They opened drawers, dumped out boxes, rifled through Devin's childhood belongings that I'd kept stored in the closet. They found nothing because there was nothing to find. Mrs. Preston discovered her bracelet 2 days later, in her gym bag, where she'd left it. She never apologized. Instead, Mr. Preston called me into his office the next week. "Miriam, we need to talk about your hours." I stood in front of his massive mahogany desk like a child called to the principal's office. "We're restructuring, tightening the budget. We'll need to cut your hours to part-time. 20 hours a week instead of 50. My heart stopped. "Mr. Preston, I can't survive on 20 hours. It's not negotiable." His voice was cold, final. "Consider yourself lucky we're keeping you on at all. After that incident with Caroline's bracelet, which I didn't take, we're being generous." Generous. The word was a slap, but it got worse. 2 weeks later, Madison posted a TikTok video. I didn't see it at first. I don't have social media. But Cooper's girlfriend showed me, her face flushed with secondhand embarrassment. The video showed me cleaning the kitchen, my back to the camera. Madison had added a filter that made me look hunched, ancient. The caption read, "POV, you're the maid who's been working for the same family for 25 years and still can't afford to leave. We're help life, no ambition, hammer stuck." It had 847,000 views. The comments were worse. She looks miserable, Lemma. Ooh. Get a real job, bestie. Why do people stay in these jobs? Madison or Savage? I sat in my cottage that night staring at that video until my eyes burned. This girl I'd raised, whose tears I'd dried, whose nightmares I'd soothed. She'd turned me into a punchline. Then came the final blow. Mrs. Preston knocked on my cottage door one evening, her smile saccharine. Miriam, can we talk? She didn't wait for an answer, just walked in like she owned the place, which technically she did. Robert and I have been discussing your situation, and we think it's time for a change for everyone. My stomach dropped. We've found someone new, younger, more energetic. She'll be starting next month. Mrs. Preston's eyes gleamed. We'll give you 2 weeks' notice, of course. Very generous, considering you're not technically a contracted employee. Mrs. Preston, please. We'll need you out of the cottage as well. We're planning to renovate it, turn it into a yoga studio. She smiled like she was doing me a favor. I'm sure you understand. The next 2 weeks were psychological warfare. They wanted me gone, but they wanted me broken first. Mr. Preston called me into his office again. About your final paycheck, Miriam, there's been an issue. I stood there, my hands clasped to keep them from shaking. What kind of issue? Well, when we audited your hours, we found several discrepancies. Days you claim to work, but we have no record of. We'll need to withhold your final check until we can verify. I worked every single day you asked me to. Then you'll have documentation to prove it. His smile was cruel. Don't you? I didn't, because for 25 years I'd trusted them. No contracts, no paper trail, just their word and my faith. Faith that was now being used to rob me. Mrs. Preston started hosting goodbye gatherings without inviting me. I'd hear them through the cottage walls, laughing, celebrating my departure like it was a victory. Finally getting that dead weight off the payroll, I heard Mr. Preston joke. The new girl is half her age and doesn't have that attitude, Mrs. Preston added. What attitude? The audacity to expect basic human decency? Then came the threat that made everything crystal clear. 3 days before I was supposed to leave, Mr. Preston cornered me in the hallway. His breath smelled like scotch and entitlement. Miriam, I want to make something very clear. His voice was low, dangerous. If you try to cause any trouble, if you go to the labor board, if you talk to lawyers, if you so much as breathe a negative word about this family, I will destroy you. My pulse hammered in my ears. I have connections everywhere. HR departments, employment agencies, apartment complexes. He stepped closer. You'll never work in this city again. Hell, you'll never work in this state again. Do you understand me? I understood perfectly. I understood that these people I'd sacrificed decades for, would grind me into dust and sleep soundly afterward. Yes, sir, I whispered. He smiled. Good. I'm glad we have an understanding. But here's what Mr. Preston didn't understand. Here's what none of them understood. I wasn't stupid, and I sure as hell wasn't helpless. Let me take you back 8 years. Back to 2017, when Mr. Preston's company was facing an IRS audit. I remember it clearly because he was panicking. I'd never seen Robert Preston scared before, but that month, he was terrified. Miriam, he'd said one night, pulling me aside in the kitchen. His hands were shaking. I need your help. I need you to sign some documents. What kind of documents? Payroll verification, employee confirmation, nothing major. His smile was strained. The IRS just needs to see that our books match our staff records. You'd be listed as an executive assistant. It's just a formality, I swear. It'll help us sort out this audit mess. I should have asked more questions. I should have read every single page. But he'd seemed so desperate, and I'd trusted him. So I signed. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that he'd actually processed those documents. He'd put me on the executive payroll to inflate his employee compensation expenses and reduce his tax burden. A scheme. Fraud. But he'd never paid me the executive rate. He kept paying me under the table, cash, the same poverty wages I'd always received. For 8 years, I'd been legally entitled to executive compensation, benefits, health care, stock options, retirement contributions. For 8 years, they'd stolen from me. I found out 3 weeks before that charity gala. Their new accountant, a young guy named David Chen who actually seemed to have a conscience, called me. "Ms. Brooks, this is David from Preston Development. I need to speak with you about a payroll discrepancy." My heart sank. I thought I was in trouble. "Ma'am, according to our records, you've been listed as an executive assistant since 2017, but we have no record of executive-level payments to you. Can you help me understand what's happening here?" The floor tilted beneath me. I don't understand. You're showing in our system as earning $127,000 annually, plus benefits and stock options. But Mr. Preston's personal notes say your household staff paid off books. This is a major compliance issue. He sent me the documents, all of them, my signature on executive employment contracts, payroll records showing me earning executive wages I'd never seen, tax forms listing me as a high-level employee with benefits I'd never received, 8 years of theft, documented in black and white. I called my cousin's husband, a lawyer named Marcus Turner. He took one look at the documents and whistled low. "Miriam, do you know what you have here? Evidence of wage theft? Evidence of fraud, tax fraud, wage theft, labor violations. You're owed every penny of that executive salary plus damages, plus penalties." He calculated quickly. "We're talking roughly $486,000 in back pay alone, possibly more with stock options and benefits." The number made me dizzy, and that's not counting the emotional distress, the discrimination, the hostile work environment. Marcus's eyes gleamed. "They've been committing felonies, Miriam. Multiple felonies. The IRS would love to know about this." I'd also kept other records, recordings on my phone of their cruel comments, their racist jokes, their threats, text messages, emails. 25 years of little cruelties, documented and stored. I'd done it originally just to remember things. They'd gaslight me so often about what they'd said or promised. But now I had ammunition. I sat in my cottage that night, surrounded by documents, with Marcus on speakerphone explaining my options. "You have 2 paths here, Miriam. We can go loud, press charges immediately, alert the IRS, get media involved, burn their lives down publicly. Or we play the long game, strategic, quiet, let them think they've won while we build an airtight case. When we strike so hard they never recover." I thought about Madison's mocking video, Mrs. Preston's cold eyes during the bracelet accusation, Mr. Preston's threats in that hallway. I thought about all the other women like me, invisible, exploited, discarded. "I want them to understand what they've done," I said slowly. "I don't want to just hurt them. I want them to learn." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Then we go quiet. We let them fire you. Let them think you're defeated. Meanwhile, we gather everything. When we're ready, we don't just win. We make sure this never happens to anyone else." "How long will it take?" "Give me 6 weeks to build the case. Can you survive that long?" I looked around my small cottage, at the life I'd built from scraps, at the strength I'd earned through decades of disrespect. "I've survived 25 years of their cruelty," I said. "I can survive 6 more weeks. Then let's make them pay for every single one." After I hung up, I sat in the darkness for a long time. The old Miriam, the one who'd trusted them, who'd swallowed every insult, would have cried. But I didn't cry. I smiled, because in 6 weeks, the Prestons were going to learn a truth they'd never considered. The help always knows your secrets, and the help always has the last word. David Chen's office was nothing like Mr. Preston's. No mahogany desk, no leather chairs, no view of the city meant to intimidate. Just a small room with fluorescent lighting, stacks of files, and a young man who looked genuinely distressed by what he'd found. "Ms. Brooks, Thank you for coming in." David stood, gesturing to a chair. He couldn't have been more than 30, with wire-rimmed glasses and the exhausted look of someone who'd been losing sleep over numbers that didn't add up. I sat, my purse clutched in my lap, every muscle tense. "I want to be completely transparent with you," he said, pulling up spreadsheets on his laptop. "When I took over this account 3 months ago, I started finding irregularities, significant ones." He turned the screen toward me. Row after row of numbers, dates, payment records. According to the official payroll system, the one that gets reported to the IRS, you've been earning $127,000 annually since 2017, executive assistant level, full benefits package, healthcare, dental, vision, 401k matching at 6%, stock options vesting quarterly. My mouth went dry. But when I cross-referenced with the actual payment ledgers that Mr. Preston keeps in his personal files, David's jaw tightened. "You've been receiving approximately $32,000 per year, cash payments, off the books, no benefits, no withholding." He pulled up another screen. "Ms. Brooks, over 8 years, you should have received $1,016,000 in gross compensation. You received $256,000. They owe you $760,000 in unpaid wages." The room spun. $760. That's before penalties and damages. After we factor in interest, benefits you should have received, stock options that vested, which legally belong to you, we're looking at closer to $950,000 to $1.1 million. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. "But here's the thing," David continued, his voice dropping. "This isn't just wage theft. This is tax fraud. They've been claiming your executive salary as a business expense for 8 years, reducing their tax burden by roughly $300,000. But they never paid you that money. They pocketed it." "Why are you telling me this?" The question came out as a whisper. David removed his glasses, cleaning them with his shirt, a nervous gesture. "Because it's wrong. Because I took an oath when I became a CPA. Because," he put his glasses back on, "my mom was a housekeeper for 20 years, and when she got sick, the family she worked for let her go without a dime. No severance, no insurance, nothing." He met my eyes. "I won't let that happen to someone else. Not on my watch." "What do I do?" "You have 2 options. File a civil lawsuit for wage theft, or..." He hesitated. "You report the tax fraud to the IRS. They'll investigate. If they find what I've found, the Prestons will face criminal charges, fines, possible prison time, and you'll still get your money. The IRS will make sure of it." "How long would that take?" "The civil route? Could be years. But the IRS?" David smiled grimly. "They move fast when there's this much money involved. Maybe 6 weeks for the initial investigation. Then everything accelerates." 6 weeks. Marcus had said the same thing. "There's one more thing." David pulled out a manila folder. "The stock options. You're listed as having received quarterly stock grants. Those shares, they're worth $147,000 as of yesterday's closing price. They're in an account with your name on it, an account you probably didn't even know existed." He slid the folder across to me. Inside were account statements, stock certificates, documentation. "This is all yours, Ms. Brooks, legally irrevocably yours. Even if they try to fire you, even if they claim it was an error, you signed the contracts. The money was reported to the government. It's yours." I stared at those documents, my hands shaking. 25 years of poverty wages, 25 years of scraping by, and all along I'd been a millionaire on paper, robbed by the people I'd trusted most. "Will you help me?" I asked. David nodded. "Every step of the way." Marcus Turner's law office was modest but competent, a small firm specializing in employment law and civil rights cases. The walls were covered with thank you letters from clients, photos of Marcus with community leaders, and his law degree from Howard University. "All right, Miriam," Marcus said, spreading documents across his conference table. "Let's build your case." I'd brought everything, boxes of everything. 25 years of my life, reduced to evidence. First, the recordings. I pulled out my phone, my old phone, even an ancient tape recorder I'd kept in the kitchen. I started documenting about 10 years ago, after Mrs. Preston told me I'd imagined a conversation we'd had about my raise. She gaslit me so often that I started recording everything. I played Marcus a sample. Mrs. Preston's voice crystal clear. "Miriam, I don't know why you people are so sensitive about hair. It's just hair. I was simply saying it looks unprofessional. You know what I mean." Marcus's expression darkened. I played another. "Mr. Preston, drunk at a dinner party. We got her for a steal. These women, they don't know their worth. They're just grateful to have jobs." Another. Madison talking to her friends while I cleaned upstairs. "My parents basically own her. She literally can't leave. Where else would she go? She's like a pet we've had forever." "How many recordings do you have?" Marcus asked quietly. 63, ranging from 30 seconds to 15 minutes, all of them showing discrimination, verbal abuse, or evidence of wage theft discussions. "This is a gold mine." "There's more." I pulled out printed screenshots, text messages, emails. This one from Mrs. Preston telling me to work an extra 20 hours 1 week off the clock, or she'd have to reconsider my employment. Marcus photographed each one with his phone, cataloging them. "Here's where it gets interesting," I continued. "If Mrs. Preston only knew I'd been collecting this evidence while she slept soundly in her silk sheets. I also have their personal calendar access. Mrs. Preston gave me her login years ago so I could manage her appointments. She never changed the password. Miriam." Marcus looked up sharply. "Please tell me you didn't—" "I didn't hack anything. She gave me authorized access, but I did preserve certain calendar entries." I showed him screenshots. Here's Mr. Preston scheduling meetings with his tax attorney, specifically discussing employee classification issues. Here's Mrs. Preston writing notes about keeping Miriam's payments off official books. "They documented their own fraud," Marcus whispered, almost in awe. "They never thought I was smart enough to use it against them." I pulled out one more folder. Financial records I was asked to file over the years, copies of checks, payment ledgers. Every cash payment they gave me, I photographed the bills before depositing them. Every receipt I was asked to file, I kept copies. Marcus spread them out, cross-referencing with David's payroll documents. "Do you know what you have here?" His voice was reverent. "This isn't just a case. This is a prosecution gift basket. Tax fraud, wage theft, discrimination, harassment, retaliation. We could teach a law school semester on what the Prestons did wrong. Can we win? Win?" Marcus laughed. "Miriam, they don't have a defense. The only question is how much they'll lose." If they only knew, I thought, watching Marcus organize my evidence. If they only knew that every time they'd laughed at me, dismissed me, treated me like furniture, I was listening, recording, documenting. The help always knows your secrets. And now, your secrets would destroy you. The day of my official last day at the Preston estate, I moved through the house like a ghost, one final time. They'd asked me to do a final walkthrough to make sure I hadn't taken anything that didn't belong to me. The irony was exquisite. Mrs. Preston watched from the doorway as I checked the kitchen one last time. "I trust you'll leave everything as you found it." "Of course, ma'am." I smiled, calm, serene. If she only knew what was about to hit her. "The keys to the cottage?" she prompted. I handed them over. 25 years, reduced to a keychain exchange. "Well?" Mrs. Preston's smile was brittle. "I suppose this is goodbye. I do hope you find suitable employment elsewhere." "I'm sure I will." I walked through each room slowly, touching nothing, observing everything. In Mr. Preston's office, I paused. The financial filing cabinet where I used to organize his documents sat in the corner. I'd already made copies of everything incriminating, but they didn't know that. I opened a drawer, moved a binder slightly out of place, left it just askew enough to notice if you looked carefully. In the master bedroom, I checked the jewelry box I'd organized for years. Mrs. Preston's insurance documentation was always kept in a small leather folder underneath the velvet lining. I pulled it out slightly, just enough. The safe in the closet, the one they thought I didn't know the combination to, but I'd watched Mrs. Preston open it hundreds of times. I turned the dial, not enough to open it, just enough that it would be obvious someone had touched it. I left their bedroom door ajar. Usually I closed it. In the garage, I moved the logbook where I used to track the car's maintenance schedules. I put it on a different shelf. Small things, subtle things, things that would make them wonder. Did she find something? Did she take copies? What does she know? When I finally left the estate for the last time, walking down that circular driveway with my single box of personal items, Mrs. Preston was watching from the window. Her face was pinched, worried. Good, I thought. Wonder, worry, lose sleep, because in 3 weeks you'll know exactly what I found. 2 days later, Marcus told me that Mr. Preston had called his lawyer, then his accountant, then his tax attorney. They're looking for something, Marcus said, grinning. They know something's wrong. They just don't know what. Perfect, I replied. The psychological torture had begun. Her name was Sophia, 23 years old, Guatemalan immigrant. She'd been working for the Prestons for exactly 3 weeks when she called me. Ms. Brooks? Her voice was small, scared. The agency gave me your number. They said you used to work for this family? I was in my temporary apartment, a small studio I'd rented with the last of my savings. Yes, I did. I need to talk to someone. I don't know what to do. We met at a coffee shop downtown. Sophia looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, her hands shaking as she held her cup. They're horrible, she whispered. Mrs. Preston makes me work 14-hour days. She pays me $400 a week, cash, no contract, no days off. She told me if I complain, she'll call immigration. My blood boiled. Same playbook, different victim. Yesterday, Mr. Preston yelled at me for 20 minutes because I folded his shirts wrong. He threw one at my face. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. And Miss Madison, she films me, makes jokes, posts them online. I'm so tired. But I need this job. My family in Guatemala. I reached across the table, taking her hand. Sophia, listen to me. You don't have to stay there. I have nowhere else to go. The agency won't help. They said I need to try harder to please the family. I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to trust me. I pulled out my phone, showing her Marcus's contact information. I'm building a case against the Prestons, a legal case, for everything they've done, and I need witnesses. Sophia's eyes widened. I can't. They'll deport me. They can't deport you for telling the truth about wage theft and abuse. That's illegal retaliation. My lawyer can protect you. I squeezed her hand. Sophia, they're going to keep doing this. To you, to the next woman, and the next, unless someone stops them. What would I have to do? Tell the truth. Write down everything they've done. Every violation, every threat, every payment. I pulled out a notebook. And I can help you find a real job. With real pay. Legal. Protected. She stared at the notebook for a long moment. Then she took it. They made me sign papers I couldn't read, she said quietly. On my first day, Mrs. Preston said it was just formality, but I think maybe they did the same thing to me they did to you. My heart stopped. What do you mean? The accountant? David? He asked me questions last week about my job title. He looked confused when I said I was the housekeeper. He said his records showed someone named Sophia Reyes, administrative assistant. Oh, they'd done it again. They'd done the exact same fraud. Sophia, you need to talk to David and to my lawyer, today. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Will you help me? Every step of the way. When Sophia left that coffee shop, she had Marcus's card, David's contact information, and a promise that she wouldn't fight this battle alone. And I had a second witness to their crimes. If the Prestons only knew, that their new victim was about to become their worst nightmare. The call came on a Thursday morning. "Ms. Brooks, this is Jennifer Hartley from Human Resources at Preston Development Corporation." I was expecting this. Marcus had prepared me. Still, my pulse quickened. "Yes?" "We need you to come in for a meeting regarding payroll discrepancies. Would tomorrow at 10 work for you?" "What kind of discrepancies?" "I'd prefer to discuss it in person." Her voice was professional, careful. "Will your attorney be joining you?" So they knew I had a lawyer. Good. "Yes, Marcus Turner will be with me." "Perfect, we'll see you tomorrow." I called Marcus immediately. "They want a meeting." "Already? That's faster than I expected." I could hear him grinning. "They're panicking." "This is perfect." The next day, Marcus and I walked into Preston Development Corporation's headquarters. The building where I'd cleaned toilets, where I'd been invisible, where I'd been nothing. Today, I walked in, wearing a navy suit Sophia had helped me pick out, my head high, my evidence in a leather briefcase Marcus had lent me. Jennifer Hartley met us in a sleek conference room. She was mid-40s, sharp, professional, and she looked deeply uncomfortable. "Ms. Brooks, Mr. Turner, thank you for coming." She slid a folder across the table. "We've been conducting an internal audit and found some concerning irregularities in your employment records." "Irregularities," Marcus repeated flatly. "Your payroll designation doesn't match your actual job duties. According to our records, you're listed as an executive assistant with a salary of $127,000 annually, but our understanding is that you performed household management duties." "That's correct," I said calmly. "Did you know about this designation?" "I signed employment papers in 2017 at Mr. Preston's request during an IRS audit. He told me it was a formality." Jennifer's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. "And were you paid the executive rate?" "I was paid approximately $32,000 per year, cash, no benefits." She wrote something down. "Ms. Brooks, I want to be very clear. This company takes compliance seriously. If there were violations..." Marcus leaned forward. "Ms. Hartley, let's not dance around this. Preston Development has been committing systematic wage theft and tax fraud for 8 years. We have documentation. We have recordings. We have witnesses. The only question is whether this company wants to settle this quietly or face a very public lawsuit." Jennifer paled. "Mr. Turner, I appreciate your directness, but my client is owed approximately $760,000 in back wages, plus penalties. She's owed stock options worth $147,000. She's owed benefits she never received, and that's before we discuss damages for discrimination, harassment, and retaliation." Mr. Preston assured us this was a simple clerical error. "Mr. Preston committed fraud." Marcus's voice was steel. "He created false payroll records to defraud the IRS. He paid my client a fraction of her legal wage. He retaliated against her when she questioned his authority. This isn't a clerical error. This is a crime." Jennifer closed her folder. "I need to escalate this to our legal department and the board of directors." "You do that," Marcus said. "In the meantime, my client has filed a complaint with the IRS, the Department of Labor, and the EEOC. I suggest Preston Development start preparing its defense." We stood to leave. "Ms. Brooks," Jennifer called out. "For what it's worth, I believe you." I turned back. She looked tired, defeated. "I've been working here for 10 years, she continued quietly. "And I've seen Mr. Preston treat people like they're disposable. I'm sorry we didn't catch this sooner." "Thank you," I said. As Marcus and I walked out of that building, past the lobby where I used to empty trash cans, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was a threat. The dominoes started falling fast. 2 weeks after the HR meeting, IRS agents showed up at Preston Development. David called me, barely containing his excitement. "They're here. 3 agents. They've seized the servers. They're interviewing everyone." I sat in my apartment imagining Mr. Preston's face, the panic, the rage, the slow dawning realization that he'd been caught. "Did they interview you?" I asked. "For 3 hours, I gave them everything. The payroll records, the discrepancies, the personal ledgers. Ms. Brooks, they called it one of the clearest cases of tax fraud they've seen in years." Good. That same week, Madison's carefully curated influencer empire collapsed. Someone, and I have no idea who, though I had my suspicions it was Sophia's cousin who worked in social media, had leaked the full TikTok video. Not just the mocking clip of me cleaning, but the audio that Madison had thought was muted. Her voice, cruel and clear. God, she's so pathetic. How does someone work for the same family for 25 years and still be poor? Like, get some ambition. My parents basically own her. It's honestly kind of sad, but also hilarious. The video went viral, but not the way Madison wanted. The comments were brutal. "This is disgusting. Imagine being this privileged and cruel. That maid probably raised you while your parents ignored you. Rich people really think they're better than everyone." Her sponsors dropped her within 48 hours. The fashion brand that had given her a $50,000 deal, gone. The makeup company that featured her in their campaign pulled the ads. Her follower count plummeted from 2.3 million to 800,000 in 3 days. She posted a tearful apology video that only made things worse. "I didn't mean it like that. I was joking. People are so sensitive these days." The internet ate her alive. Meanwhile, Mr. Preston's business partners started distancing themselves. Marcus heard through his network that 3 major investors had pulled out of current deals. The board was calling emergency meetings. "There's talk of removing him as CEO," Marcus told me during one of our strategy sessions. "The IRS investigation spooked everyone. No one wants to be associated with fraud." Mrs. Preston's precious social standing crumbled next. Her charity board, the one she'd chaired for 15 years, held a vote. They asked for her resignation. The official statement cited conduct unbecoming of the organization's values after several former employees came forward with their own stories of mistreatment. She showed up at one of their luncheons anyway, trying to maintain appearances. A video of her being asked to leave went viral. You could see her face, perfectly made up, crumpling as she realized she was being ejected from the social circle she'd spent decades cultivating. Cooper, the son I'd practically raised, was the only one who tried to reach out. He called me one evening, his voice thick with shame. "Miriam, I don't know what to say." "Then don't say anything." "My parents, what they did to you, I knew it was wrong. I should have said something. I should have." "You should have, Cooper, but you didn't." My voice was gentle but firm. "You were comfortable, and comfort makes cowards of good people." He was crying. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know you are, but sorry doesn't give me back 25 years. I hung up. If Cooper wanted redemption, he'd have to find it on his own. The Preston household was imploding, and I had a front row seat thanks to Sophia, who kept me updated on everything. "They fight constantly," she told me during one of our coffee meetings, screaming at each other. "Mr. Preston broke a vase yesterday, threw it at the wall during an argument with Mrs. Preston." "What do they fight about?" "Everything. Money, the investigation. Whose fault it is." Sophia's eyes widened. "Mrs. Preston keeps screaming, 'You said she signed the right forms. You said this was foolproof.' And Mr. Preston yells back, 'You're the one who treated her like garbage. You couldn't just be decent.'" The Prestons were turning on each other, exactly as I'd hoped. "Madison barely comes home anymore," Sophia continued. "And when she does, she blames them for ruining her career. She said her parents are toxic and destroyed her life." The irony was delicious. "Are they still paying you?" I asked. "Barely. Mrs. Preston handed me $200 last week and said it's all they can afford right now. She told me to be patient." Sophia made a disgusted sound, but I saw her buy a $3,000 handbag 3 days later. "Keep documenting everything," I reminded her. Meanwhile, I remained invisible, unreachable. I'd moved apartments, changed my phone number. Only Marcus, David, and Sophia had it. The Prestons had no way to contact me, no way to threaten me, no way to manipulate me. The silence was its own form of torture for them. I know they tried to find me. Sophia said Mrs. Preston had called the old phone number dozens of times, leaving increasingly unhinged voicemails that went to a disconnected line. Marcus played me one that someone had forwarded to him. Mrs. Preston must have called his office. "Tell Miriam we need to talk. We can work this out. There's been a misunderstanding. If she would just call me back, we've always treated her like family. This is all a terrible mistake." "Like family," I said bitterly. "That's what they're calling it now." "They're desperate," Marcus observed. "They know what's coming, and they can't stop it." The IRS investigation was expanding. Agents were interviewing former employees, other staff members, anyone who'd had financial dealings with Preston Development. The company's stock was tanking, down 40% in 3 weeks. Mr. Preston had hired a crisis management firm, but it was like trying to bail water from the Titanic with a teaspoon. "The board is pushing him out," David confirmed during one of our secret meetings. "They're offering him a resignation package if he leaves quietly. Otherwise, they'll fire him and release a statement about discovering financial irregularities." Will he take it? His lawyers are advising him to, but his ego won't let him. Robert Preston had spent 40 years building his empire, his reputation, his image as a self-made success story. And now, because he'd been too cheap to pay one woman what he owed her, it was all crumbling. If they only knew, I thought, sitting in my modest apartment with my evidence boxes and my lawyer's business cards. If they only knew that all of this, their panic, their losses, their public humiliation, was just the opening act. The real performance hadn't even started yet. 6 weeks after my last day at the Preston estate, Marcus called me with the news I'd been waiting for. "It's time. The mediation is scheduled for next Thursday, 10 a.m., neutral location, the law offices of Anderson and Associates. They're bringing their legal team. We'll bring ours." "Will the IRS be there?" "Not directly, but they've agreed to coordinate with us. If the Prestons don't settle, the criminal investigation accelerates. If they do settle, they still face penalties, but potentially avoid prison." "I want them there," I said. "All of them. Mr. Preston, Mrs. Preston, Madison, Cooper, everyone who benefited from stealing from me." "That can be arranged." Marcus paused. "Miriam, I need you to understand something. When we walk into that room, they're going to try everything. They'll cry. They'll apologize. They'll make excuses. Mrs. Preston will probably try to appeal to your emotions. We were like family. That kind of thing." "I know. Can you handle it?" I thought about 25 years, the cruel comments, the stolen wages, the jewelry accusation, Madison's mocking video, Mr. Preston's threats. I can handle it. Good. Because we're not just asking for back pay, we're asking for everything. Full wages, stock value, benefits, emotional distress damages, penalties. We're talking 1.2 million minimum. The number still made me dizzy. "And we're requiring changes," Marcus continued. "Public statements, policy reforms, independent audits of their labor practices. They don't just pay you. They admit fault. They make sure this never happens to anyone else." "What if they refuse?" "Then we go to trial. We call Sophia. We call David. We play the recordings. We show the documents. And we let a jury decide." Marcus's voice hardened. "Miriam, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've never had a case this airtight. If they refuse to settle, they're insane." "Pride makes people insane. Then let's hope they're smart enough to swallow theirs." That week, I prepared. Marcus had me practice my testimony, my statements, my responses to potential attacks. "They'll try to paint you as vengeful," he warned, "as if wanting to be paid what you're owed is somehow wrong. Let them try." I reviewed every document, every recording, every piece of evidence. I knew this case better than I knew my own heartbeat. On Wednesday night, Sophia came over. She'd agreed to be my witness, my corroboration, proof that this wasn't an isolated incident, but a pattern. "Are you scared?" she asked. Terrified, I admitted. But more than scared, I'm angry, and anger is useful. What will you say to them? The truth, just the truth. What the Prestons didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that I'd also contacted a journalist, a reporter from the state's largest newspaper who specialized in labor rights and corporate malfeasance. She'd be in the hallway during the mediation, waiting. If the Prestons settled, the story would be smaller. Local family settles wage theft case. If they refused, front page, full expose, every detail, every recording, every crime. I'd given them a chance to do this quietly. Whether they took it was up to them. The night before the mediation, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my small apartment, surrounded by boxes of evidence, and thought about the journey that had brought me here. 25 years ago, I'd been a young widow desperate for stability. I'd walked into the Preston house with hope, with trust, with a belief that hard work and loyalty would be rewarded. How naive I'd been, but also how strong I'd become. I pulled out a photo of Marcus, my late husband. It was old, faded, taken a few months before he died. He was smiling, wearing his construction hard hat, his arm around my shoulders. I wish you could see this, I whispered to the photo. I wish you could see me fight back. Marcus had always told me I was stronger than I knew. When I doubted myself, when I felt small, he'd hold my face and say, "Miriam, you are not what they see. You are so much more." I'd forgotten that. Somewhere in those 25 years of being made invisible, I'd started believing their version of me, the help, the servant, the woman with no power, no rights, no voice. But I'd never been that woman. I'd been a mother who raised her son alone and put him through college. I'd been a survivor who rebuilt her life after devastating loss. I'd been a strategist who documented abuse for years, knowing someday it might matter. I'd been a warrior in disguise. I lit a candle, something I did whenever I needed to feel Marcus's presence. The flame flickered in the dark apartment, casting shadows on the walls. "This is for us," I said, "for all the dignity they tried to take, for all the years they stole, for all the people who come after me who deserve better. Justice isn't revenge. Justice is balance. Justice is setting the world right when it's been tilted wrong, and tomorrow I would bring justice." I thought about what I would say if given the chance, not the legal statements Marcus had prepared, but the truth from my heart. You treated me like I was nothing, like my labor was worthless, like my humanity didn't matter. You profited from my work, stole from my family, and slept soundly while I struggled to survive. But I am not nothing. I never was. And tomorrow you'll understand the cost of forgetting that. I laid out my clothes for the morning. The navy suit Sophia had helped me choose, a cream blouse, simple jewelry, just the cross necklace Marcus had given me on our first anniversary. I reviewed my notes one final time, every key point, every critical piece of evidence. I was ready. At midnight, I finally tried to sleep. But my mind was racing, imagining the moment when I'd walk into that conference room, when the Prestons would see me, really see me, for the first time in 25 years. Not as the help, not as invisible, but as their reckoning. I dreamed of Marcus that night. He was standing in a courtroom, though in the dream logic way it was also our old kitchen, and he was smiling. "Show them who you are," he said. "I will," I promised. When I woke, sunlight was streaming through my windows. Thursday morning, the day everything changed. I showered, dressed, checked my reflection one last time. The woman looking back at me was someone the Prestons had never met. Confident, prepared, unafraid. Marcus called at 8:30. "Ready? Ready? Miriam, whatever happens in there, remember, you've already won. They're already destroyed. This mediation is just the formality. The victory is yours. Thank you for everything. Thank me by walking in there with your head high and making them face what they've done." I grabbed my briefcase. The evidence inside felt like armor, and walked out of my apartment. The Prestons had no idea what was about to hit them, but in 2 hours they would learn that the help always has the last word, and sometimes the last word is checkmate. The conference room at Anderson & Associates was designed for exactly this kind of showdown. Neutral territory, glass walls overlooking the city, a long mahogany table that could seat 20 people, but today held only the key players in this drama. Marcus and I arrived first, intentional. We set up our evidence, organized our documents, prepared our battlefield. At 9:58 a.m., they arrived. Mr. Preston walked in first, flanked by 2 attorneys in expensive suits. His jaw was set, his eyes hard. He looked like a man who'd convinced himself he could still win this. Mrs. Preston followed, her designer handbag clutched like a shield. She'd lost weight. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, despite the makeup meant to hide them. Madison slumped in behind her parents, scrolling on her phone, trying to look bored. But I saw her hand shake. Cooper came last. He wouldn't meet my eyes. They sat across from us, a canyon of polished wood between us. Mr. Preston's lead attorney, a silver-haired man named Richard Blackwell, opened his briefcase with theatrical precision. "Let's keep this civil, shall we? We're here to resolve a misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding," Marcus interrupted. "There's fraud. Let's not waste time pretending otherwise." Blackwell's smile tightened. "My clients are prepared to offer a settlement, a generous one considering the circumstances." The circumstances being 8 years of wage theft and tax fraud? Alleged, documented. Marcus slid the first folder across the table. These are the official payroll records from Preston Development. Ms. Brooks is listed as an executive assistant, earning $127,000 annually. Full benefits, stock options. These documents were filed with the IRS. They bear your client's signature. Mr. Preston's face flushed. That was an administrative error? Was it? I spoke for the first time, my voice calm, steady. Was it an error when you asked me to sign those papers during your audit? When you told me it was just a formality? Mrs. Preston leaned forward. "Miriam, please. We can work this out. We've always cared about you." "Like family?" I pulled out my phone. "Would you like to hear how you talked about your family?" I pressed play. Mrs. Preston's voice filled the room. "She's just the help. She's lucky we even pay her." The color drained from her face. I played another clip. Mr. Preston, drunk and arrogant. "We got her for a steal. These women, they don't know their worth." Madison's. "My parents basically own her. She literally can't leave." 60 seconds of audio, 25 years of contempt, distilled into undeniable evidence. "These recordings," Marcus said quietly, "represent a fraction of what we have. Dozens more, documenting harassment, discrimination, and explicit acknowledgement of illegal payment practices." Blackwell was sweating now. "Audio recordings obtained without consent are inadmissible in many—" "This is a one-party consent state," Marcus countered. "Every recording is legal, and even if they weren't admissible in court, they're perfectly shareable with the media, the IRS, the Department of Labor, the public." I slid the next folder across. Text messages, emails, calendar entries where Mrs. Preston explicitly discussed keeping my payments off the books. Screenshots of conversations about avoiding payroll taxes. Mrs. Preston made a small, wounded sound. "Financial records," Marcus continued, adding another stack. "Every cash payment Ms. Brooks received over 8 years. She photographed the bills, documented every transaction, cross-referenced against the official payroll that claimed she was being paid 6 figures. The discrepancy," I said, my voice hard, "is $760,000. That's how much you stole from me." "We didn't steal," Mr. Preston started. "You did." Marcus's voice cracked like a whip. "You created false payroll records to commit tax fraud. You claimed Ms. Brooks's salary as a business expense, reducing your tax burden by approximately $300,000. But you never paid her that money. You pocketed it. That's embezzlement. That's fraud. That's a felony. The IRS is already investigating," I added. "They've seized your servers, interviewed your staff. They know everything." Blackwell whispered urgently to Mr. Preston, who was gripping the table's edge, knuckles white. "There's more," Marcus said. "Sophia Reyes, your current employee, you did the exact same thing to her, listed her as an administrative assistant while paying her poverty wages. She's prepared to testify." Which means this isn't an isolated incident, it's a pattern. "A pattern the board of directors would find very interesting," I said, "along with your investors, your partners, every business associate who'd rather not be investigated for associating with tax fraud." Madison finally looked up from her phone. "This is insane. You're trying to destroy us over a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" I turned to her, and something in my expression made her flinch. "You posted a video mocking me. You called me pathetic. You turned my life into entertainment for your followers." "That was a joke. It cost you your career," I said softly. "How's that for a punchline?" Silence fell over the room like snow. Marcus leaned back in his chair. "Here's what's going to happen. Ms. Brooks is owed $760,000 in back wages. The stock options legally registered in her name are worth $147,000. That's $907,000. Add interest, penalties for wage theft, and damages for the hostile work environment. We're seeking $1.2 million. Blackwell choked. "That's outrageous." "What's outrageous," Marcus said, his voice deadly quiet, "is that you tried to steal a woman's life savings, her retirement, her dignity, and you thought she'd be too scared or too poor to fight back." He pulled out the final document. "But here's the beautiful irony, the thing you didn't know, the thing that makes this case absolutely perfect." Marcus looked at the Prestons with something close to pity. "You didn't just insult your employee, you financially empowered an executive officer of your own company. When you listed Ms. Brooks as an executive assistant, you gave her legal standing, stock rights, fiduciary access. She wasn't just a housekeeper you could dispose of. She was, legally speaking, part of your corporate structure." He let that sink in. "Which means every decision you made without consulting her as a registered executive, every board meeting she wasn't included in, every financial document she wasn't shown, those are corporate governance violations. She could sue you not just for wage theft, but for breach of fiduciary duty." The Prestons looked like they'd been struck by lightning. "So here's the deal," Marcus concluded. "You pay the $1.2 million, you sign a public statement admitting fault and apologizing. You implement third-party audits of all labor practices. You establish a fund for other workers you may have exploited, and you pray the IRS goes easy on you. Or," Blackwell asked weakly, "or we go to trial. Every recording gets played in open court. Every document becomes public record. Every news outlet in the state covers the story of how a wealthy family systematically robbed their employee for decades." Marcus smiled. "Your choice." Mr. Preston's face was purple with rage. "You ungrateful—" "Don't." My single word cut through his fury. "Don't you dare call me ungrateful. I gave you 25 years. I raised your children. I kept your house. I protected your secrets. And you repaid me with theft, abuse, and humiliation." I stood, placing my hands flat on the table. I was never just the help. I was a woman doing honest work, expecting honest pay. You're the ones who turned it into something ugly. You're the ones who chose greed over decency. Mrs. Preston was crying now, mascara streaking her cheeks. "So yes," I continued, "I'm taking everything I'm owed, every penny you stole, every bit of dignity you tried to strip away, and I'm making sure no one else has to endure what I did." I looked at each of them in turn. "You taught me an important lesson. The help always knows your secrets, and sometimes those secrets destroy you." They settled. 2 hours later, shaking hands, signed the agreement. The Prestons would pay $1.2 million in structured payments. They'd issue a public apology. They'd submit to independent audits. But the consequences had already begun cascading before the ink dried. The IRS, which had been waiting for the mediation outcome, accelerated their investigation. Within a week, they froze the Prestons' personal accounts pending a full audit. The penalties alone would run into the hundreds of thousands. Mr. Van Preston's board of directors held an emergency vote. The result? Immediate resignation or termination. He chose resignation, which at least let him pretend it was his idea. His statement claimed he was stepping down to focus on family and personal matters. The truth was all over the business pages. CEO ousted after wage theft scandal. Mrs. Preston's charity board didn't even give her the courtesy of a vote. They called her, told her she was out, and released a statement. We cannot in good conscience have leadership that has demonstrated such profound disregard for labor rights and human dignity. Every gala invitation dried up overnight. Every lunch date canceled. Every friend who'd air-kissed her cheeks suddenly didn't return calls. Madison's remaining sponsorships evaporated. The brands that had hesitated before now ran for the exits. No one wanted to be associated with the family that had abused their housekeeper for decades. Her follower count continued to plummet. The apology videos she posted, increasingly desperate, increasingly unhinged, only made it worse. Cancel culture is toxic, she cried in one video, apparently unaware that consequences aren't the same as cancellation. The staff at Preston Development started quitting in waves. No one wanted to work for a company under federal investigation. No one wanted their own labor practices scrutinized. Within 3 months, Preston Development had lost 60% of its workforce and half its clients. The empire Mr. Preston had spent 40 years building crumbled in a season, and I watched it all from my new apartment, a real apartment, paid for with my settlement money, with something that felt like peace. The first check cleared on a Tuesday, $400,000, the initial payment. I stared at my bank account balance for a full minute, hardly believing it was real. Then I called Devin. Mom, is everything okay? Everything's perfect, baby. I just wanted you to know. We're going to be okay. Better than okay. The rest of the payments followed over 6 months. By the time the final check cleared, I had $1.2 million minus legal fees and taxes. Still enough to change my life completely. The cottage I'd lived in for 25 years? The court awarded it to me as part of the settlement. The Prestons were forced to sign over the deed. I sold it immediately. Couldn't stomach the memories. Used that money to start something new. The Miriam Brooks Foundation for Domestic Workers' Rights, a nonprofit dedicated to protecting housekeepers, nannies, caregivers, all the invisible women who keep society running while being treated as disposable. We offered free legal services, emergency financial assistance, job placement, education on labor rights. Sophia became our first employee, properly paid, properly documented, properly respected. Within a year, we'd helped 43 women escape exploitative situations. We'd won settlements totaling over $2 million for stolen wages. The foundation became my legacy, not the money, not the revenge, but the lives we changed, the workers we protected, the dignity we restored. Devin came to the foundation's opening ceremony. He stood next to me, his arm around my shoulders, so tall now, so accomplished, my engineer's son, and whispered, Dad would be so proud. I touched the cross necklace Marcus had given me all those years ago. I know, I whispered back. Late at night, sometimes, I think about what happened, not with anger anymore, but with a kind of philosophical clarity. The Prestons thought they had power because they had money, but real power, true power, comes from knowing your worth, from refusing to be diminished, from having the courage to stand up when standing up costs everything. I spent 25 years invisible, not because I was weak, but because I was surviving. Sometimes survival means bending. Sometimes it means staying quiet. But survival also means documenting, remembering, waiting for the right moment to strike. The invisible women of this world, the cleaners, the caregivers, the cooks, the nannies, we're not powerless. We're underestimated. And there's power in being underestimated. We see everything, we hear everything. We know secrets that could topple empires. And when we finally speak, the world has to listen. The Prestons made the fatal mistake of thinking I was nothing because I served them. But service isn't weakness. Labor isn't worthless. And the woman scrubbing your floors might be 10 times smarter, stronger, and more capable than you'll ever be. She's just waiting, watching, gathering evidence. And when her moment comes, she won't hesitate. I didn't want revenge for its own sake. I wanted justice. I wanted change. I wanted to make sure what happened to me never happened to another woman who was just trying to survive, to provide for her family, to build a life from broken pieces. That's what dignity looks like, not pride, not ego. But the fundamental belief that every person deserves respect, fair wages, and basic human decency. The Prestons lost everything because they forgot that basic truth. I gained everything because I never did. 6 months after the settlement, I attended a fundraising gala for workers' rights, not as the help, as the guest of honor. I wore a midnight blue gown. My hair was styled professionally. I walked into that ballroom, similar to the one where I'd overheard the Prestons mocking me, with my head high and my heart steady. People approached me all night, labor leaders, politicians, activists, journalists. "Ms. Brooks, your foundation is doing incredible work. Ms. Brooks, would you speak at our conference? Ms. Brooks, we'd like to feature your story." At one point, I was standing by the bar when I overheard 2 young women talking. "Who is she?" one asked, watching me. Her friend smiled. "That's Miriam Brooks. She's the woman who took down Preston Development. They called her just the help for 25 years. And now, she runs a foundation worth millions. She signs checks. She changes laws. She protects workers all across the state." The first woman's eyes widened. "That's her? That's her." I didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge that I'd heard, just smiled into my drink and thought about how far I'd come. From invisible to unforgettable, from powerless to powerful, from victim to victor. The Prestons weren't at that gala, of course. They'd been uninvited from every significant event in the city. Their social capital had evaporated along with their financial stability, but I was there, celebrated, honored, respected. And that was the sweetest justice of all. So if you're watching this, if you've made it through this entire story, I want you to hear me clearly. If you've ever been underestimated, if anyone has ever looked at you and decided you were less than, decided your work didn't matter, decided you were disposable, I need you to know something. They're wrong. Your labor has value. Your dignity has worth. Your life matters. And if someone tries to take that from you, document everything. Stay smart, stay strategic, and when the moment is right, fight back with everything you have. The powerful only stay powerful when the powerless stay silent. But when we speak, when we stand up, when we demand what we're owed, the whole world shifts. I spent 25 years being invisible, 25 years being told I should be grateful for scraps. 25 years watching people profit from my work while treating me like I was nothing. But I was never nothing. And neither are you. So here's what I want you to do. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt overlooked or exploited or dismissed, leave a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me your story. Because every story matters. Every voice deserves to be heard. And if you believe that workers deserve dignity, that labor deserves respect, that no one should have to choose between survival and self-worth, hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel. Share this story. Because the more we speak up, the harder it becomes for people like the Prestons to get away with what they did. Change doesn't happen in silence. It happens when enough voices rise together and say, "No more, not to me, not to anyone." The Prestons thought they could erase me, replace me, pretend I'd never mattered. Instead, I became unforgettable, and you can too. Remember, the help always has the last word, and sometimes the last word is revolution. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for believing that justice matters. And thank you for standing with every worker who's ever been told they're just anything. We're not just anything. We're everything. And it's time the world remembered that.